Hey, welcome back to Shutterbug Club. I'm your host, Sue. Today I'm here with Danny Lairon. I'm so excited to talk with him. He is a photographer based in New York, and he does a lot of kind of like fashion editorial work. He works with really powerful women. He loves to tell their story, and he just has so much passion and purpose behind his work. He's also been published in some incredible magazines like Harp's, Elle, Forbes, and I'm excited to talk with him, and he's going to share with us the behind the scenes of what it's really like to be a fashion photographer, working to get published in these huge magazines and just trying to make a living doing his thing. So, how are you, Danny? I'm so glad to have you.
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for joining me today. Before we get into the photography stuff, I have a random question for you. What is your comfort food or snack?
Tacos.
Oh, okay. Just
Probably a little obvious, but yeah.
okay, why don't you introduce Taco a little bit? Tell us about
Yeah.
who Taco
L-
is.
Let me turn the camera a little bit. He's sleeping right now. Well, this is my little boy. He's uh he's an 8-year-old mutt. I bought him in a parking lot in the Mission District of San Francisco. Uh yeah, like 8 years ago, when I was on my way out for chicken and eggs. And he's probably the best $200 I ever spent.
Oh, I love that. So
Yeah.
if you guys don't follow Danny, he shares a lot of videos on social media, and Taco, his dog, is in them, and he's just so cute and fun to watch.
Yeah, he's sweet.
So Danny, can you explain to us what it is that you do as a photographer and yeah, just like your work?
Yeah. So day to day, my passion, what I moved to New York for, and what really gets me going every day is my work in fashion editorial photography. And so most of my efforts and energies are put into that. And then there's the reality of being a fashion photographer that there is little to no money in it, not enough to live every day. So I do spend a considerable amount of my efforts editing content for brands, influencers, and anybody else that values content to drive sales for their business.
Can you explain the editorial industry a little bit? Like what an editorial is and like kind of what the purpose is behind these?
Yeah, sure. So I think context, always matters, and it certainly does here. So at a high level, the basic definition of editorial most people agree on is any article that's written that expresses an opinion. And this can be in a local magazine, it can be in a big time magazine, an online magazine, it doesn't matter. The area that I work in is fashion editorial. And fashion editorial differs from 99% of all the other content in the magazines I work for, in that fashion editorial is the 1% of content in the magazine that's produced to express story and express an opinion. And the other 99% of work that's in the magazine is advertorial. And this is content and opinions that are produced to sell a product, good, or service. So in the 1% of photography and content creation that I work for in the magazines, we focus on telling stories and elevating the voices and opinions of the people.
I can imagine it's very difficult to get into one of these higher end publication magazines, especially since it's only like the 1% for photographers and their concepts and stuff. Why do you think it's so valuable or like so many photographers are trying to get into these publications? What are kind of the benefits for them?
I think it's probably multi-part. I think there's a sort of romanticized idea about what it is to be a fashion photographer. And I imagine that world did exist in maybe like the 80s or the 90s, where the industry was booming and there was a real scarcity and demand for photography, because it wasn't that long ago that it was very technical and it was very expensive to produce any kind of images whatsoever. Now, with technology progressing to where it is, there's a saturation in the market. At least what I try to do, I think our work stands out and gets picked up,
Yes.
is we pick mission driven pieces to produce. And when we are able to have an authentic story and production value that meets the publisher's requirements, we're able to get our work picked up.
That's so good. Can you tell me a little bit about kind of your passion behind photography?
Yeah, I think a lot of it was from my mom, who loved photography, and a lot of folks in our family. And I think, it's just really tough to make a living with the camera. So I in a former life worked in technology and early stage technology companies in San Francisco, and I was really lucky to get to be a part of a couple of teams that got bought out, not because of my contributions, but because they had incredibly talented engineering teams, and I was able to use that savings to go back and pursue passions and learn, passions like photography based on that. So I think, at an early age, getting to see, what you can create with the camera and stories you can tell with it, I think planted a seed. And then luckily later on in life, I was able to figure out how to financially afford how to learn how to do that.
Can you talk a little bit about that, balancing these passions with paying the bills?
Yeah. Um, I think it's probably not popular to talk about, but like I don't think you can. I don't think there's a balance. I just heard a talk by probably the top commercial photographer in New York City, just a few weeks ago, Enrique Vegas, who, I mean, this guy gets paid to shoot covers for Vogue, but he's still taking, private jobs because you just can't in 2025, heading in 2026, be a full-time fashion editorial photographer. That just simply doesn't exist anymore. So I don't think there's a balance. I think there's we you try to take work that's most adjacent to what you want to do. And a lot of times in fashion that means commercial. But inevitably, of all of the types of photographers that there are in the photographer family, when you think about wedding, events, sports, journalism, us fashion photographers are the black sheep. It's us and street photographers. We don't make shit, but we, get to go the hardest at the stories and the subject matters of our choosing. And because of that, we make the least. But I mean, if you talk to like wedding photographers, I mean, those guys have balance because they make 250K a year. Um, and they have consistent income. They have high ticket gigs that come in, a lot. So if you're in one of the other verticals of photography, you get balance. But if you're in the fashion space, I mean, just expect financial insecurity. That's just what it is.
Do you think getting published in these magazines is helpful to get you other related work? So, like, maybe working with brands or something? Like, if you like fashion, would it help you to get hired by some clothing boutiques or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, I think it was like 3 months ago when my first work in Vogue dropped, and the phone definitely rang more than that. But it wasn't. I think I've been getting consistently published now for just like a little bit, but all of it just it helps, but it's not probably like the life-changing moments like I thought it would be. I'm like, oh, like if I could just get to that, like, or if I could just get in there, then the whole world will change. And things are definitely better. I don't want to say that they're not different than they used to be, but like I'm still out here hustling for every gig that I get. Like I'm still grinding, for every shoot I can get signed on for. So
What is it that keeps you going when it's tough, when you're struggling to find this next project that you're going to work on? What is it that pushes you?
I think it's that I know that I'm gonna die, and I think about all the time like what my last work would be. Like
Mhm.
if I only had one more thing to share, like what do I want that to be? And typically it's on the shoot that I'm on or the shoot that I'm editing because as photographers we have things in different cycles of pre-production and what we're shooting and post-production. And I think like, yeah, just like in the last few years, and it's just like, okay, I know this is gonna end. And what do I want? What do I want that work to be?
So it's purely just the passion of creating the artwork itself, creating these stories, telling other people's stories.
Yeah, it's that, and that, I think that we're so lucky right now to get to do this because they're thinking, 5 years, I won't be relevant.
Mhm.
Content creators will be much different, artists in general.
In just 5 years?
I mean, you look at where we come in the last 5 years, and then you look at the rate the technology is progressing, and we look at how
Mhm.
hard it is right now today. And I think, I hopefully will still be relevant because I like to learn new tools. And as you and I spoke earlier, I make a lot more revenue outside of photography and doing editing and videos for others than I make doing my core work. So, like,
Mhm.
yeah, I don't think roles are going to be, they're just not going to be around like they are. And the roles that are there are going to be more people who can use these new tools.
Yeah.
And so I think it's so special that, like, I still get to go pick up a camera with all of this like big, equipment and have 10 people on set who are all doing these very detailed jobs because, in the current place that we're in now, and I think where we're going to be within the next 5 years, like, yeah, human beings are getting replaced. And it makes sense. If you want to get something done cheaper and faster, there's tools out there. But at least the space that I work in the storytelling and the creative side, at least for right now, I think that we're really, really lucky to get to do it because in 5 years, people might not get to.
Can you talk a little bit about your journey in trying to get published in these magazines? What are some of the struggles that you faced and challenges while working towards this?
Yeah, I've been getting asked that question more, and I think about it because I just laugh at myself. Like I go back and I look at the email where I remember I emailed British Vogue a few years ago, just like over and over and over. And finally, like on the fifth email, they wrote back and they said something to the effect of just like basically like get the hell out of here, like stop writing to us. And that's because I was just an individual guy. Like, hey, I'm just Danny. I shoot pictures. I'm about my shit. Like, let me in. And then they finally just said, like, hey, like somebody gave me enough of a nugget. Like, this is not how you work. They were like, go get some representation. And so, I'm really lucky now in that I'm not signed to an agency, but I work and I have a relationship with two agencies that when designers and brands and influencers go to these agencies and they say, hey, we need to get media attention. Lucky enough that these two agencies call me enough and they say, hey, we have a client that just came in, then we have a contract for Harper's Bazaar or for Elle or for Vogue, and we'd like you to do it. So yeah, so that process started with not knowing what the hell I was doing and just emailing people and looking like a complete fool. And really, what was able to turn was go and just kind of rush my way into getting a relationship with an agency, and I found them through Instagram. I was looking on a big time photographer's work that I liked. He had tagged them. I hit them up like, hey, I'm Danny and I'm dying to shoot. If there's any way that you can tell me about your process, I'd love to be considered. And after sending enough of those, somebody was finally like, hey, let's talk.
Okay, that's really good to hear because I know hardly anything about the editorial fashion niche. And if I wanted to get published, that would probably be the first thing I did too, was reach out to these big magazines, just like trying
Yeah.
to get noticed. So that's really good to know that it's better to go actually through the other people who already have connections with them.
Yes. The other thing that people should know is that they should open up their wallet because the other half of that is, I mean, you might have to grease some wheels. You might have to pay some people. The magazines and the publishers are for profit companies. They are not in the business of publishing art or telling stories. And so, I think there is a lot of gatekeeping around it. And I think if you're not a nepo baby or somebody that has connections, and I didn't, my parents were public school teachers, we grew up middle class in Northern California. I saw a fashion magazine when I went to the dentist's office, you know whenever that was. And so this wasn't something that like I knew about. So, one route could be that people could endlessly email, but more so, I mean, to be completely honest with you, I would break out some cash and invest in your art if that's how you really want to do it. Because in the end, that's what I had to do.
So important investing in yourself. I love that you mentioned that. Can you talk also a little bit about, I know you've worked for and with a little bit some photographers who inspire you, some people who just inspire you. You're so passionate and obsessed with this niche. And so can you talk about your time with working for these people and what you've learned?
Yeah, I've been really lucky in the last year or so because I've had this list of about 5 creators that are all of my inspo boards. And I've got to work for a few of them in this last year, like Reinhardt Kenneth and Loki, a film director out in Los Angeles. And, I think the time on set working for them, at the time, when I went to go work for them both, is that I hit roadblocks in my development and trying to level up and just figure out all those little details that elevates the work from pretty good to great or from pretty good to publishable. Because it gets really, really hard when you're trying to make those micro incremental adjustments. Getting to be behind the scenes on their set and seeing the production value that they put into their work, seeing the crews that they work with, who they hired, why they hired them, and then how to interact with those creatives. At its core, I think of creatives as superheroes, kind of like the X-Men and all of the different roles on set, be it hair and makeup artists or set designers or lighting director, creative directors, and models too, is that everybody's got superpowers. And we all come on set that day for 4, 6, 8 hours. How do we maximize everybody's skills, and how do we put them all in positions to succeed so that they're able to best use their skill set in a way that helps us execute our vision?
Yeah, that's so good to know too, especially that for those more complex photo shoots, so many people are behind that. It's not just like the one photographer doing the lighting and doing the wardrobe and all of that. You have a whole team of people who you work with, and that's how it really helps it come together.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think that specifically is what I didn't know before working for Loki or for working for Reiner, because I would see their work and I would always see a bunch of people tagged in the credits. And it's almost like, at the end of a movie when you see like a gazillion credits go by and like, the director and, maybe like the first star and the second star. And then there's a bajillion names afterward and you're like, what the fuck is
Mhm.
that? Those people are why it looks the way it does. And so I think working for Loki and working for Reiner, like seeing like, okay, it helped me get past that gatekeeping level of not of understanding like what those roles did, but also specifically why we need them. I was then able to go and look for those people and recruit those people and then, hopefully, get them on set so that they're able to do their thing in a way that helps elevate the piece.
Did you get those initial jobs working for those photographers?
Having no shame in my game.
That's what it takes sometimes.
Yeah, it's by asking to hold a bag. I think when wanting to get better, there's this impulse for us to ask something of somebody else, and like I found that's never a good way to be able to like help grow that relationship. And so I try to do the inverse, which is I try to offer help. And so if you're better than me, I'm going to ask to carry your bags. I'm not going to ask you to tell me how you did it. And I think, I think by making that change, by me, reaching out to people who are better than me and saying like, hey, I'm dying to learn. Like that's my agenda here. And if I can hold a tripod for you, or I can carry some set equipment, or, right now what it is, I try to offer that I'll shoot BTS for you. But if you need somebody to make coffee or, to make a donut run on set, like I will raise my hand for that job. And I think by offering to help was how I was able to gain access to learn, versus reaching out to these people and saying like, tell me how you did it. What are your settings? What's your camera that you use? Like,
Yeah, that's so good. And I love that you mentioned also you're still doing that even now with the behind the scenes that you record because that's some of the jobs you're taking is recording behind the scenes for these fashion designers and stuff. So even still, you're in the industry and you're still trying to figure out where you can be helpful while you're still learning until you can take on something.
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to that imposter syndrome. Is that, I think if there's been like little things that have happened in the last month where I've kind of been like, holy shit, like I think I'm a New York City fashion photographer. Instead of, the guy that left home a year ago with, 500 nothing followers and zero engagement, begging for photo shoots and people just ghosting me all day. But yeah, I think I mostly came here to learn. I didn't really think I was going to make it. I was just hoping to find any job on set. And so learning has been the greatest thrill of being here. And like being in New York City is like having access and being around all the people who are just totally obsessed with their shit, and getting to go and be around them and hopefully help them has leveled up my game.
Is that how long you've been pursuing this? Is a year?
I've been in New York. Well, I just got back to New York 2 days ago. Uh, I moved March, I think I left, but I've been in photography now. I think this is like year 5. Yeah. But like, I don't really measure it by years. I measure it more by hours. I think measuring it by years is something that I think will lead photographers astray. Sometimes using that measurement to say, I've been doing it 3 years or 5 years or 10 years, it sort of gives this assumption like, okay, you've been developing that whole time. Where, I'll meet people that have been photographers for, X number of years, and they don't actually know anything about a camera. They've
Mhm.
gotten past a point and click. And so it's the 10,000 hour mark. I passed sometime like right before coming out here, and I thought I was a little disappointed by that because I thought, oh, at the 10,000 hour mark, I will be a master, and I wasn't.
Well, your work is incredible. I think you're not giving yourself enough credit for that, but I know we're always so hard on ourselves. But I love that you mentioned that though, not measuring it by the years, because I feel like that is something photographers do as comparison, and it just makes them feel worse. It's like, I've been doing this for 5 years. I should be further along than this other photographer who's been doing it for 5 years. And so, like you just talked about, you've grown so much in this last year just because you put so much time and effort into it. So it's really not about the length of time, it's about just like the effort and the hours. So I love that you mentioned that.
Yeah, the way my mentor John Louis always described it is, how you can, if you're trying to assess the level of competence of a photographer, it's how many problems can they solve?
That's
Because
good.
that's really what photography is about. It's about solving problems. And if you think about like we as photographers will come up with a vision and a mood board and say, this is what we want to shoot today. It's like, okay, great. Like you can design whatever you want, but like, how are you going to make it that with the equipment you got? That's a problem. There's all kinds of mini problems inside of there. And, judging like how good is a photographer? What's like, what's your vision? Can you execute it? Which means how many problems can you solve in between?
That's really good. Do you have, like, a story about the first time you actually got published in one of these bigger magazines? Like, how that felt? Or even if it's not your first time, just, like, a really memorable time when you finally were like, "I did it."
It was my first editorial for Harper's Bazaar. And I remember at the time, I had paid off a media agency or a media buyer. If you're not familiar with the media buyer, these are companies that buy spots in bulk. It's almost like buying a piece in Elle or Vogue or Harper's if you got it off the back of a truck. And that's how
Okay.
media buyers gets these random spots in different publications. And I'd met a media buyer at my very first New York Fashion Week, and I paid him a little bit of money to get 3 pictures, is what he told me, in like the very, very back corner of Harper's Bazaar, Vietnam. And I took it, and I went and I got the best models in San Francisco to do it with me where I lived at the time, and took my own money to rent studio time. And I got my crew to come help me with lighting, and had an amazing post-production creative editor set up. And we shot the whole thing, edited for 3 pictures. I gave it to the media buyer, and he came back and he's like, "Hey, Danny, like a thing happened." And I'm like, "What? Like what happened?" And he was like, "Well, we turned in your work, and they said they're gonna make it into an editorial. So we need 16 pictures now." And I was like, "Holy fuck, man. 16 pictures." Like I I knew I needed 3 bangers. I shot for 5. I'm like, I can maybe drag this thing out to 8. So it ended up, it ended up being kind of a lot of drama. But in the end of the day, did 3 more reshoots
Wow.
and lit a bunch of people on fire. And we got 16 pictures in Harper's Bazaar, Vietnam.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah, I was taking a look at that before the episode too, and those pictures are so cool.
Yeah, so awesome. I love that work.
I love that you said you did 3 reshoots too. It's like really shows how much work goes into the behind the scenes of creating these photos.
Yeah, I think Taco and I ate top ramen for a month, but like we had to get it right, and that was the only way.
So what happened after that? How did you continue to get more publications and kind of what was that like?
Yeah, so I hit like, I think I got a couple more after that, and then I just couldn't pay off that media buyer anymore. Like I was getting designers to help me a bit, but like the numbers just weren't there. Especially on the production side too, because there's a publishing cost, and then there's also what it costs to produce that content. And so I got 2 more pieces and some other publications after that, but then I really hit a wall, and it wasn't until I was able to partner with my first agency here in New York after making that move in, I think it was June, where they started to work with the clients that were picking up the cost for publication and production, that I was able to get back in. And so I think that was probably a combination of having a couple published pieces of work, so people would at least look at me when I would cold email them. Uh,
Mhm.
Probably at the end of the day, it was just brute force. Was just saying like, I'm gonna knock on enough digital doors until somebody answers me.
I love that. The hard work. So after getting a few images published, what are some like similarities in these images that you have published? Like what are these magazines really looking for in these photos?
Yeah, well, I think in the niche that I work in fashion editorial, there still is a demand for story and for authenticity and originality, and so I try to gear toward those projects. I don't always get to, but when it's sort of a blank slate and they say, Danny, like, give us whatever you want, or like, hey, what's your idea? I'll tend to do projects that are by designers that are women of color and designers that utilize sustainable practices like upcycling. And it's a total home run for me.
And are these designers that you've worked with, are they also people you've just reached out to?
Yeah, sometimes I get connected to the agency. Like sometimes the agencies will reach out and say like, "Hey Danny, we have this designer," and they'll send over like a bit about, their background and any other relevant information, like if it's a new line, or maybe it's a person that's like in a movie, or it's a company that has an announcement, or like what's really cool is when they're like, "Hey, we have this like upcycle designer," or we have this like international designer, and here's their background. Other times, very small amount of the time, when it's like, hey Danny, like it's your choice, because I moved here to New York, I didn't know anybody. I actually just jumped on Threads. I don't know why Threads, but I think for some reason I saw somewhere that like, hey, that's a good reason to connect. So like, yeah, I got here and I got on Threads and just started writing things like, hey, I'm Danny, I moved to town, here's my mood board. Oh yeah, I would always give a link to, like, in Google Drive or Google Slides, I'll mock up a mood board and just like a
Okay.
quick like who, what, when, where, why, like this is what I want to shoot, why I want to shoot it, like just that kind of thing, and just try to start recruiting talent from there.
And did Threads work out for you?
Yes, although I did find that the more that I got to work on sets for people like Reiner and people like Loki, that I would meet people there, and they were able to introduce me to others. So Threads was good, but it wasn't, the total pipeline for recruiting talent. Oftentimes that was referrals here in New York. And I think that was just, it's part of why moving here and taking that chance was having that proximity to set designers, hair and makeup artists, lighting directors,
Yeah.
lighting technicians, creative directors, other photographers, because other photographers always make the best lighting directors. And that all of us being, just mashed down together here in New York and Brooklyn, there's just something that I think the proximity helps a lot.
Yeah, and I think word of mouth networking is really just gonna be the way to get the best referrals and the best people.
Yeah.
Can you take us behind the scenes of planning one of these concepts that you're gonna set up for a publication? Like, picking out the concept itself, and then also finding, like, the models and the outfits. I know you work with, like, fashion designers, but if you're kind of planning this on a budget, can you talk about that, how you would do that?
Yeah. Sometimes it's in the project. So I wouldn't say forced on me, but it's sometimes an agency or an individual will come and they'll say, "Hey Danny, here's a designer that would like to shoot with you," or "Here's a designer that wants to shoot with us and we think you'd be good for it." I think from there it's going forward and figuring out what kind of budget we have, because regardless if they have the money or not, we need every role on there. So whether they have the money for a hair and makeup artist doesn't negate whether that role is going to be needed. Trying to figure out our budget ahead of time and then we reverse engineer. Inevitably, there's never enough money. So how are we going to make it work with what we got? And yeah, then we go from there. But it's, I would say in short, it's figuring out what are the requirements from the person or persons that are financing the project, and then reverse engineer with how to make it work with not enough money.
Okay. Yeah. For somebody who doesn't yet have these connections with these agencies and stuff, and they're just trying to elevate their work, improve their work, are there any tips you have for like finding good models to work with? Like, is there, because you probably need actual models to elevate, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a number of ways to elevate work, but one of the easiest ways for photographers, I know when I wasn't very good and I wanted my work to be better, was start shooting with models who know what the fuck they're doing. And so this is measured by how many poses can they do and are
Mhm.
they able to emote? Where if we want to get away from like normative standards of beauty and say that what is not fashion is a pretty girl who's overly sexualized, who's standing in a bikini and smiling. We have to like get away from that and say, how are we going to convey story with a fully clothed woman? And we start looking at it from that angle. Typically, you're going to need somebody who is like a quote unquote real model. A real model for me is somebody that knows poses and can emote. And so if you can find a person that can do that, then as a photographer, you can, theoretically do less. This is going to elevate your work. But if you really, really want to get your work elevated, the two things that you concentrate on as a photographer: light. Get a flash. Any $10 flash will work. You don't need a brand new flash. Light is light. Just throw a flash on your camera and start making mistakes. And the second thing to do would be and go work with models who know poses and know how to emote. If you can do those two things, then you can get away with not having the best set designers, hair and makeup artists, or even story.
Have you collabed with a lot of models? Like when you were in the process of building portfolio and just trying to improve your work, do you reach out to them on Instagram or how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, things are a little different now than they used to be 6 months ago. But when I was heavily recruiting for models, and my work was unknown, and people didn't really particularly want to work with me for any reason. The way that I would recruit models is I would, instead of asking them if they wanted to collab, I would give as much of a full thought idea in a Google Slides of mood board and shot list and a who, what, why, where, when, a treatment, sometimes complex, sometimes down and dirty. And that's how I would recruit. So instead of, messaging you up like cold DM on Insta, like, "Hey Sue, love your work, love the collab. Would you like?" That's gonna, get left on red. I would send a Google Slides with a treatment, which was my who, what, why, where, when, and a mood board of what I wanted to shoot. And I would say, "Sue, I have this project I've been working on for a long time. I think you'd be perfect for it. Here's the shoot that I want to do. When you get a chance, check out this link to my mood board and let me know if you're interested." And I found that by sharing what I wanted to produce with them, that increased the number of yeses and responses that I got drastically.
Okay, that's really helpful to know. And where did you get your inspiration for these projects that you wanted to work on?
Inspiration from.
Is it just like other photographers you've seen? Was it like, I don't know, I'm just trying to think like coming up with the story. I know sometimes that's challenging.
I think it's more that I have a bank of ideas and thoughts that I want to share.
Yeah.
And these things are like a year, 2 years, 3 years saved. Like I have mood boards that are incomplete and that I started years ago. And what I do is I try to tinker with them and I kind of remember them to a certain degree. And when a designer comes along or a model comes along, I go and I pull from that bank or I pull from that area that I was thinking. But I think it's like in this very selfish way. It's the stories that I want to share. It's just I don't
Mhm.
always have the characters or the budget to share them yet. And I have to wait for the time and place and for those things to come along. And then it's really magical when it does because it's like, oh, it's like my editorial for Harper. It's like I had that idea a year ago.
Wow.
Like I just didn't have the money
Yeah.
or the caliber of people to pull it off. Like it was just me and nobody was fucking with me then. But then when that opportunity came, I was like, yes, we're going to go for it.
What about for their outfit, like the model's outfit? Because I know with the fashion, you're probably gonna need something that's a little more expensive. How do you get that?
Yeah. So one of the things I learned along the way is that to increase your chances of getting into these magazines is that you need to have a designer and they need to be able to check out so that that company, say Harper's, Elle, Vogue, can very easily go online and they're going to look for two things. They're going to look for their Instagram and they're going to look for a website. They don't always have to have things for sale, but it sure helps if they do. Whether you're doing creative or editorial. So, as publishing became more of a priority for me, I stopped just winging it and just, hey, I have this idea. It was more like, okay, I have an idea. Where do I find a designer who's similar to that style that I want to shoot? And then in the very beginning, because I would write them up and I would ask for I didn't know it then, but I was asking for a pull, which is like essentially let me borrow your stuff. I didn't know it then. I would ask to borrow their stuff and they wouldn't let me because they didn't know me. I bought it and I shot it anyway. So yeah, I think it just goes back to investing in yourself. I need a designer. The designers wouldn't give it to me, so I just went and got it.
Have you tried that again since you've done more work? Do you know if these designers would let you borrow if you wanted to do like your own project?
You know what's the craziest like imposter syndrome thing? But like like I'll DM people now and they say yes. It's really cool. Or like even recently I was with my friend Cindy. She's the director over at the New Icon Cancun agency, and we finished up a shoot last week in Tulum, and we were taking the bus back. And there's this long there's one freeway that connects all of the Yucatan Peninsula. It's like Bacalar all the way up to Cancun. You got Playa del Carmen, Tulum in there, or it's Bacalar, Tulum, Playa, Cancun, and on that stretch, there's like big stretches of no Wi-Fi. And so right when we came out of the big stretch of no Wi-Fi, like we both kind of like jumped back on Instagram and I had this message from this designer that I've saved their work for the longest time. And he wrote back, like he wrote in just like this really nice message, like, hey Danny, like, wherever you are, like we'll send pieces to. And it was just like one of those imposter syndrome moments. I turned to Cindy and I'm like, Cindy, this might not be like the coolest thing to do, but like me and you were stuck here on a bus. So I'm gonna share it with you. I'm like, look who just said they would send me clothes. Like, this is nutty. So I don't send as many cold DMs anymore, but when I do, it's just so crazy. A lot more people say yes than say no.
That's like a full circle moment for you. I feel like when you've been hustling like you are and you're just trying so hard, it's really hard to just like reflect on everything that's happened. And so you can't really appreciate it and process it
Yeah.
until later because I know what you mean, like that imposter syndrome. I've dealt with that a lot lately. And I usually have imposter syndrome the most when I'm growing the most. It's like, wow, I almost like, how am I here? I don't deserve to be here. But then it's like
Yeah.
you think about it and you've put in actually so much work.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's just it's been a bit of a ride, but yeah, but I would say for anybody that's like looking that wants to get designers, same thing with the models.
Hmm.
There was a time when I got to shoot this piece earlier this year for Vanity Fair Germany. And I remember it took me a while. The designer Jonah Jai, who does a lot of work, not just designing, but also in the community in San Francisco, that I think I stalked her for like 6 months and like read through their website and read about their sustainability. and the pieces that they were designing. And then finally, like when there was a time and place, like sent her a mood board on why I wanted to shoot for her, and just tried to express like, hey, I've dug into your brand. I love what you guys are doing. There's a piece that's come up in Vanity Fair. I think you guys would be perfect for it. And I think Dina, her daughter, who's the director over there, I think she took to that because there was a lot of photographers that wanted to shoot for them. But I don't know that everybody had dug into why they were designing and saying like, hey, I want to shoot you guys not just because you have awesome clothing, but I appreciate why you designed these pieces in the first place. And here is the mood board that I've designed to elevate your story.
Yeah, that's so good. You put in the work and you actually care about them and telling their story and not just like featuring yourself in a publication. I love that. Thank you so much, Danny. You've provided honestly so much good information. Is there any question that you wish I asked you that I didn't? Like anything else you wanted to talk about?
Love it if you talk to me about my birthday party that's coming up next month.
Okay, tell me about your birthday party.
Since you asked, I am collabing with this really cool company here in New York City. They're called Dream Build Connect. They're headed up by Gabe, and I first ran into them when I first moved here to New York City, and I didn't know anybody. And they provide a great community for creatives in New York, for people who have just moved here or have been here for a long time that want to meet other creatives in the area. And New York City can be a hard place to meet people. And Gabe and his crew have done a great job of creating a safe space for people to come together and partnering with really awesome venues for us to come all and meet each other. They also have an amazing mocktail bar for anybody that gets down with mocktails. So they have an event coming up. I think it's January 22nd. And they're really cool. They were like, hey, we can throw you a birthday party if you want. I'm like, awesome. And they said, we'll get you a cake. And I was like, I'm there. So
Wow.
anybody in New York City, January 22nd, 2026, if you want to come meet some other creatives, look them up on Insta, Dream Build Connect.
That's so cool. I wish I was closer to New York City. Well, thank you for sharing about your birthday party too. I actually have a friend who I think would really love that, who's around the area, so I'm gonna send this to her and let her know.
Awesome, for
Can
sure.
you share your socials with everyone and tell us where they can find you?
Yeah, it's Danny did that with a little underscore at the end. It's the same on TikTok, but I think I posted like 8 times on there because TikTok gives me a headache. But
TikTok
yeah,
is,
I'm
yeah.
mostly on Insta.
Okay, great. Everyone, go follow Danny and check out his work. It's incredible. Thank you so much for being here, Danny.
Awesome. Thank you, Sue.